Welcome to English Buddhist Terminology. In the last 3 programs, we went through the 3 basic steps to how we become a Buddhist. Therefore, this week, we're going to begin with a new series on the basic concepts of Buddhism. And the first concept of Buddhism that we're going to talk about today is dependent origination. When the Buddha first became enlightened while he was sitting underneath the Bodhi tree, he realized the truths of dependent origination as well as causes and conditions. So he realized the fact that everything exists and ceased to exist because of these 2 ideas, which are dependent origination and causes and conditions. There's one thing that we must bear in mind. It's that these truths were realized by the Buddha, not created by him. So these are the truths that applies to everything, even before the Buddha became enlightened. This is also a philosophy in Buddhism that makes Buddhism a different religion from others. And here, dependent origination means that things originate depending on certain causes and conditions. Therefore, dependent origination is also a truth that played a key factor to how Sariputra, one of the Buddha's greatest disciples, became the Buddha's disciple. This happened after the Buddha attained enlightenment, that Sariputra was still a Brahmin, working very hard, practicing to search for the truth of life. So it was one day when he was walking on the streets, he came across one of the first 5 bhikkhus, who was also one of the first 5 disciples of the Buddha. His name was Asvajit. As he was walking along the streets, Asvajit was a disciple of the Buddha who has learned the spirit or the teachings from the Buddha. Therefore, everything he did, even when he was walking, he was displaying the radiance and the spirit taught by the Buddha. So naturally, he would have had a very good demeanor. And this caused people to have a very strong sense of respect in Asvajit. Therefore, the same happened to Sariputra. He felt very touched upon seeing someone with such a good demeanor. Therefore, he walked up to Asvajit and asked him, "May I ask who you are? And can you please tell me where you come from and who your teacher is?" Asvajit answered, "My teacher is the great Sakyamuni Buddha." Then Sariputra asked again, "Well, can you share with me the teachings that he has given you?" So Asvajit said that, "My teacher, the Sakyamuni Buddha, taught me that everything or all phenomena in this world arise due to causes and conditions. And all of these phenomena cease to exist also due to these causes and conditions. Such is the truth of life." And as Sariputra realized that he was being told the truth of the universe, and which is also the truth that he has been searching for a very long time in life, he knew immediately that Sakyamuni Buddha is the teacher that he has been searching for a long time. He became so happy, so he went home and sought his best friend, who was Moggallana. And he invited him as well as all of their disciples to see the Sakyamuni Buddha. So together, all of them went to the Sakyamuni Buddha and made a request to become his disciple. This was how the Buddha's disciples, who was the foremost in wisdom as well as the foremost in supernatural power, became the Buddha's disciple in later days. So from this, we can see the importance as well as the great power that dependent origination as a truth has in all of us. Now, what is dependent origination? Just then I've said that dependent origination is a theory that everything arises and ceases to be due to certain causes and conditions. So for one thing to exist, it needs to depend on the right conditions to exist. Just as the Lankavatara Sutra says, phenomena do not arise independently. They arise dependent on each other. So it tells us that no thing and no phenomenon arise out of nothing, and that no thing and no phenomenon can exist by itself. And furthermore, as I've said, that nothing can exist on its own. So let me give you an example. Just look at the table that I'm sitting over here. We know that this table is made of wood, but wood has to come from a tree. And at the same time, a tree needs the right conditions of a sunlight, water, and fertilizer, as well as good care after the seed has been planted. Therefore, for the table to be here, it has to depend on the condition of wood, while wood has to depend on the condition of the tree that needed also the right conditions and care to grow. A second example is myself sitting here. In order for me to be born, there need to be my parents. There need to be my mother and father. And at the same time, my parents, in order for my parents to be born, there has to be my grandparents. So there needs to be two sets of grandparents to give birth to both my mother and my father. And let's go back even further. Where do my grandparents come from? They were given birth by their great-grandparents and so on. So I depend on the existence of my parents, who depend on the existence of my grandparents, and so on. Therefore, from this, we can see how closely dependent origination is deeply related to our lives. Now, let us look at dependent origination and causes and conditions. Dependent origination, as a truth, in order to exist, it needs to depend or rely on causes and conditions. So here, causes and conditions tells us that nothing is an independent existence, so that no self is separate from other things. Just like I've said before, this table over here, it has to depend on the many conditions of wood and hard work, as well as nature that gives birth to the tree. So once again, when the Buddha became enlightened, this is what he said. All phenomena arise from causes and conditions, and all phenomena are obliterated by cause and conditions. So the Buddha's teaching versus scholastic inquiries and knowledge becomes the following. As for scholastic inquiry, they look more on the explanations of appearances. So it becomes an interpretation based on the name and form of phenomena or the things. On the other hand, the Buddhist theories, they emphasizes more on the penetrative understanding of the nature of phenomena. Therefore, the Buddhist theory, on the second hand, becomes more ultimate and complete. For example, just take a look at my hand, right here. Common knowledge tells me that it's a hand, while medical science will look at this hand as a structure of bones, skin, sinew, and blood. And furthermore, if we look at this hand from a medical perspective, if we look at this hand from a literature perspective, literature will explain this hand with style, as well as we'll look at it as a gesture or an expression that we do with our hands. And let's go even further. The philosophers will interpret the hand as an embodiment of destiny and friendship. Say, when I shake hands with other people, this becomes friendship, but this is done with a hand. And physics, on the other hand, will explain the hand as an extension and contraction, that the hand is simply a force of movement. Say, when I move my hands around like this, it's a force that moves the hand around. And summation will tell us that the hand is regarded as real, that it's an existence, something that truly exists. So in contrast, the Buddhist view of my hand becomes like a penetrating X-ray. So it tells us that the hand is really an elusive form. So it's something that is unstable in nature, and it will eventually cease to exist. And so that phenomenon is ultimately empty in its nature. So let's say if I extend my hand and make a grasp. Common knowledge and intellect would say that I have grasped some dust and air and particles. So it is a movement and gesture. But from the Buddhist point of view, the grasp is like a dream, an illusion, a bubble, a shadow, or like the dew, a lightning. So it is only a phenomenon that exists because of the combination of certain causes and conditions. Now, let me stop here for a short break, and I will continue with my explanation. So don't go away. Hi, welcome back. After my discussion on the various conditions and perspectives to how the hand has been observed, we have come to a discovery that the human perspective is usually quite narrow and confined. So this is what usually stops us from seeing the truth of the world with the radiance of ultimate wisdom. And we would have come to discover that suffering or happiness in this world are merely a differentiation caused by our perception and cognition. So that we know that when we come to understand and accept the Buddhist teachings, we need to change our perspectives. And once we do that, the things in this world will become much more different to how it first appears to us. Once there was an old woman who was always crying. She would be crying on a rainy day, and then she would cry on a sunny day. So no matter what weather it is, she would be crying. Therefore, people gave her the nickname of the crying woman. One day, as she was crying as usual as she was walking on the streets, she came across a Buddhist monk. Then this Buddhist monk asked her, "Please tell me, why do you cry all the time?" So the old woman explained, "I have 2 daughters. My older daughter is married to an umbrella maker. Therefore, she needs to depend on rainy days in order to sell her umbrellas. So if it's a sunny day, I would worry about how she won't be able to sell any umbrellas, and this makes me cry and nervous. On the other hand, my younger daughter is married to a rice noodle maker. Therefore, they will have to sun-dry these rice noodles before they can be sold. So if it's a rainy day, I will start to worry for my younger daughter because she won't be able to make any living on rainy days. Therefore, I have to worry, and that's why I cry for them all the time." The Buddhist monk listened to this and said to her, "Hey, you can change your way of thinking, and this way I can come up with an idea so that will make you much happier. So on a sunny day, instead of thinking of your older daughter, why don't you turn around and think about how your younger daughter will be able to sun-dry the rice noodles and sell them? So this way, she won't have a problem. And on the other hand, if it starts to rain, then your older daughter who sells umbrellas will be able to make money. And this way, you will be happy both ways." So the old woman accepted the Buddhist monk's idea, and from then on, when it's a sunny day, she will be smiling. And when it's a rainy day, she will also be smiling. Therefore, people started to call her the smiling woman. So from this story, we can know that once we change our perspective or the way we think about this world, we'll become much happier persons. This is also by exploring and observing the causes and conditions, and to make the best out of our understanding of the causes and conditions. And this way, we'll become much happier persons in this world. Causes and conditions are the 2 basic factors that produce or underlie each phenomenon. So, at the same time, the cause is considered much more powerful than the condition. Still, cause needs to depend on condition to exist and vice versa. Take, for example, a seed. A seed needs soil, water, sunlight, and water, and many other good things to grow. So the seed is the cause, and while water, sunlight, and everything else become the conditions that the seed needs to rely on in order for the seed to grow. Or secondly, a house will need bricks or wood or furniture or concrete, etc., in order for it to become a house that is comfortable to live in. So we know that once the right causes and conditions are present, that an effect will occur or a result will be created. A third example is that a banquet needs the right conditions to be successful. So once there was a rich man who held a large banquet. He invited all very important guests. But as time went by, he realized that half of his guests had not arrived when it was time to bring on the food. So the chef came up and asked him, "Should I bring on the food now?" The rich man said, "No, let's wait for a moment." He waited for another short while, but these half of the guests still had not showed up. Therefore, he started to get nervous and anxious. Then he said, "Oh no, just when I hold such an important banquet, all those ones who should have been here are not here yet." And as the guests were already present, they heard this. They felt a bit embarrassed. Am I the ones who should not be here? And this made them angry, so some of them left. And upon seeing the half that were here leaving his banquet, the rich man got nervous again and he said, "Oh no, the ones that shouldn't go are all gone now." And the remaining guests that tried to stay became even more angry, so all of them left. So therefore, sometimes while we need the right conditions for something to happen, we still need to make sure that we're putting our efforts to make sure that everything goes right. So if we lose the chances of grabbing onto the right causes and conditions and instead destroy these good causes and conditions, then we won't be able to accomplish anything that we have in mind. The next question here I have for you is, how do we know that cause and condition exist? Well, we can look around us. For example, when something goes wrong, we need to observe the causes and conditions that are present and look for what is missing. For example, why does a machine fail to function? We can look around it, and perhaps it could be a broken screw or a loose part that causes the machine to malfunction. Or why doesn't a space shuttle launch? It could be due to the reason of a computer failure or a miscalculation. Or why does a house collapse? If you look around, it could be a missing pole or an unstable structure. It could even be a condition of a natural disaster that causes the house to collapse. Or why do we fall ill? Why does the body become sick? This is caused by the imbalance of the four elements that compose the body. And the four elements I'm talking about here are earth, water, wind, and fire. So when problems arise, what we need to do is to really try to reflect and look for the missing causes and conditions. Then we'll understand why things don't work the way they do. Once, King Milinda asked Bhikkhu Nagasena, "Are your eyes the real you?" No. He asked again, "What about the ears?" No. And the nose? No. Or the tongue? He still said no. What about the body? Is the body real you? And once again, he said, well, the body is only a composition of different causes and conditions, therefore it is not real. So the king asked again, well, so the mind must be you then? Still, the Bhikkhu Nagasena said no. And by this time, King Milinda began to get annoyed, and he asked further, well, If the eyes, ear, nose, tongue, body are not you, then what exactly is you? Bhikkhu Nagasena answered with a question. Is a window a house? King said no. What about the door? Is the door a house? No. So, what about the bricks? Are the bricks and the tiles a house? The king said no. So what about the furnitures and pillars? And still he said no. So Bhikkhu Nagasena smiled and said, if the windows, the door, the bricks, and the pillars are not the house, what is the house? This was when King Milinda understood that causes, conditions, and effects could not be separated or understood through a biased or partial view. So a house can only be built with the fulfillment of many conditions. Likewise, human existence also depends on the right causes and conditions. So if we know the law of causes and conditions, and we will be able to plant good causes everywhere and cultivate good conditions all the time. And this way, our life will be smooth on the path to success. There are a few varieties of causes and conditions here, and we need to examine these varieties or perspectives differently. And before I go into these perspectives, I would like to take a short break again. And once again, don't go away. Stay with us.